I'm going to be working on a 2006 Nissan Altima with the 4-cylinder engine that they come with, the 2.5 CVTC. I'm going to be replacing every single motor mount it has, because the motor mounts that these came with are absolutely terrible and they tend to break. And the way that they're set up is that if, let's say for instance, the front one breaks, you start giving a lot of pressure to the rear one, and that one breaks. And then the way the ones on the transmission and on the right side of the engine are made is that then they rip because of the movement, the back and forth movement that it causes. So in essence, almost every single time, every single one of them is bad. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to replace every single one in the easiest manner possible. Let's go ahead and get started on that. Okay, so replacing every single one of these motor mounts can get expensive because some of them are like 50 bucks, other ones are like 80, around there. So what I actually did is I waited about a week. I ordered them online from eBay for a company called Super Auto, and they came in this nice little priority mail package. They were about 60 bucks with shipping for all 4 of them, and they're actually pretty decent. They're not terrible like the ones that you get at cheap auto parts places, where you can actually bend the rubber that they put on the motor mounts, and if you can bend it with your hands, it's obviously the engine's going to rip it apart again in almost probably like 2 or 3 months. So these are actually a lot sturdier. So for the price and the quality is not bad. So let's go ahead and start on installing these. Okay, let's start off by removing what we can from around the passenger side motor mount, which is going to be the first one I'm going to try to replace. Here's what it looks like. So it gives us an idea that we need 2 bolts here, a nut here, and then 2 more bolts here that are actually holding it down. So I'm going to start off by removing the reservoir out of the way. That's 2 10mm bolts in. Comes right out. Just place it out of the way. You don't even have to disconnect the hose. Okay. That looks like it's possibly stay there. I need to loosen up this line a little bit. Hold off of that so that we have a little bit of movement when we want to get it out. Okay, now the next thing we're going to have a little bit of trouble with is the fuse box itself. Go ahead and see how we can lessen its volume and kind of move it out of the way. Get to the 1 bolt that's being held right here. On this part, the fuse box is actually covering it a little bit. Okay, so there is a 10mm bolt right here. I'm going to go ahead and move. That's holding down the fuse box. Here we got some clips, so let's go ahead and remove that clip with a flathead screwdriver. Try to move it out of the way as much as possible. Now what we need to do is start removing the bolts from the motor mount. Okay, so the bolts that we're going to be removing are all 14mm. So let's go. I got an extension. First one out comes with this little bracket. I'm taking off this other one. The one we're taking off is the one that goes right here on this side. There's the motor mount that actually bolts up to the chassis. Like that one. Now this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. Before we remove these ones, I want to go ahead and remove this one, because this one looks like it's going to be a little bit more difficult to remove as soon as we pop these off. So if we remove this one first, these ones should just come right off, and the motor mount will be easy to take out. Let's go ahead and do that first. So the easiest way that I found to remove that bottom nut is by using extensions with a 14 millimeter. That way we can remove this a lot easier. From up there, there's no space. There we go. Got it. Got it from down here. Okay, now that we have that bottom nut removed, let's actually go ahead and remove this little bracket that holds the fuse box in place. There are two 12 millimeter bolts that we want to remove. Comes out just like that, nice and easy. Now let's go ahead and remove these two. These are a little bit more tighter on there. Now that they're loosened up, let's go ahead and take them out. Alright, take them out. One's going to be longer, one's going to be shorter. Make sure you remember where you put them. There it is. It comes out nice and easy. Look at this one. It's not even in there anymore. That's how bad it was. Now let's go ahead and install the new one. Go ahead and slip it on there. Gotta line up everything. It might be a little bit difficult, line up everything like that. You could always put a jack underneath the engine. Make sure you put a 2x4 in between them so it doesn't damage anything, and then you can position the engine that way also. So let's go ahead and mount this back up. Now the ones that I'm lining up are the bottom ones. Move it around a little bit. You can use any type of bar to kind of just line it up where it's supposed to go. Line up one of them. Put the bolt in by hand. You want to line it up as much as possible and then just put it in by hand. So you can start off with that, make sure it doesn't mess it up. Got that one in. Remember, this one comes with this little bracket. Let's go ahead and bracket on first and then raise it up. There we go. Everything lined up good. Torque them a little bit better. Make sure you tighten them good. And then go ahead and get underneath and put that last one up. You can do that after we assemble everything right here. Let's actually go ahead and put it all together, put the bracket back on. Just basically assemble it all back up. Just don't forget to put on the bottom nut. We're going to do that right now. Now that we've already done the passenger side motor mount, we're going to go ahead and do the driver's side transmission mount. Start off by removing the airbox cover, just so it'll be a lot easier to get to the transmission mount. So I've been examining it a little bit. It looks like make it a lot easier to remove the transmission mount, which is basically this one. I'm gonna have to remove the battery so I can get all the cables and stuff out of the way. And because the main bolt that goes through the center actually comes out towards the battery, so it'll be a lot more easier to do if we remove the battery. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. These cables are gonna be in the way also. So I'm gonna go ahead and go. There's a lot more room to work with now. So first, there is a 10 millimeter bolt on the back side with another bracket holding onto the transmission. Let's go ahead and remove that. also all 14 millimeter. You know what? Let's go ahead and remove this battery bracket also in the way. Just unclip that. They look like they're all 12 millimeter. There we go. More accessible now. So now let's go ahead and use our 14 millimeter ratchet to remove all bolts. Okay, now that we have it all bolted up, let's go ahead and put the battery bracket back on and start putting everything back together in this area. Now that we are done with the two top ones, the other two are at the bottom. One is in front and one is in the rear. So we are going to be changing the front one first, as it is a lot easier. The back one's a little bit more difficult. So let me go ahead and show you guys the bolts. So there's three of them actually. So there's this one over here, and then one up here that goes in between the rubber part. So it is a 17 millimeter bolt. So it looks like I'm gonna be using a ratchet and a wrench at the same time. Once I can break it loose, just basically take it off. Okay, that one's loose. You can go ahead and just smack it out. There's the first one. Go ahead and remove the second one. Just take it off with my hands. There we go. Second one off. Now the only one left is the one that goes on the actual rubber piece. This one, if you guys can see it, the nut itself is on there, so we don't need to remove that. So basically just take out the bolt. That's all we really need to do. Looks like I don't have a lot of room. Yep, coming up by hand. Got lucky on this one. On other ones it might be a little bit more corroded and it won't come out as easy. So you're just gonna have to keep wiggling at it. Here it comes. It's almost out. And got it. There's the bolt. They're all 17 millimeter. So now looks like I'm gonna have to remove the bracket. So let's go ahead and remove the bracket. Looks like it's going to be the only way possible, because everything else is in the way. And then you can't bring it up because it has like little locks right there that basically are supposed to hold the motor mount when it's just sitting there. Okay, so this bracket has 3 14mm bolts. So you're gonna need to use a wrench for this one so you can get it all to fit properly. To completely remove it, so I guess we're gonna have to just loosen them. There we go. So we just have one more. Okay, so if it's way too stuck in there, just basically do that with your wrenches so it can give you a little bit more leverage, and that should be enough to loosen it up. So let's go ahead and get that fourth one out. You gotta be really careful when doing that because you can bust your fingers really easy. Start bleeding all over the place. Okay, so 4 of them, and they're 14mm. Basically, move the bracket out the way. Hopefully it'll fit through here. If not, we can take it out through the top. It doesn't want to come out through here. Nope. We're gonna have to take it out through the top. Okay, now that you basically removed it through the top and then placed everything in here, everything I just did the same thing, just it's loose. I haven't even put one bolt on it yet. So it's the only way it'll come out through the top. So then you put everything sort of where it goes. Then we can start putting the bolts in. I'm gonna go ahead and start by putting the top ones in. There we go. Got it in almost all the way. You don't want to tighten it yet to make sure the other ones line up and go in also. Got it to start the thread. Hands are getting tired. Let's keep doing that. Get the bolt in all the way. Before you tighten the top bolts for the bracket, you want to go ahead and make sure you put in the bottom ones so you can make sure they line up and they start going in by hand with the thread on them. Because if you tighten the top ones, then you won't be able to move it around so it can get to the right spot. It's like this bottom one. Put in fairly easy. There you go. That one lined up pretty good. Now this one is the one that was hard to get out earlier. This is the motor mount being in the way, sort of. So I have to use the crowbar a little bit to kind of move it out of the way. Got the bolts in, and now after you've put all the bolts on the bracket, make sure you don't tighten them so there's a little bit of wiggle room. And then put in the main bolt that goes through the actual motor mount, that goes through the rubber part, to make sure that's lined up properly. Now, as you know, that one's good. When you put in the bolts to where it mounts to the subframe. Okay. The other bolt in. Looks like everything lined up perfectly. So now you just, after all the bolts are in, but they're loose, just go ahead and tighten them all, and you should be good. This is a method I use to make sure that everything, all the bolts go in properly, and you're not having too much trouble trying to get them in first. Once they're in, you're good to go. Okay, now we're going to be working on the back motor mount. I had a couple people tell me that this was the most difficult one to do, so we're going to see how difficult it really is right now. So starting off, I'm going to go ahead and take off this little heat shield. It's got 2 10mm bolts on it. Okay. You're going to need to get that out of the way to be able to loosen up the main bolt that goes through the motor mount. There's this little bracket back here that looks like it has 2 bolts up to the back of the motor mount right there. So we want to go ahead and remove those 2 to be able to move the motor mount around after we loosen it up. So it's got 2 10mm bolts on the back side, so you're going to need a wrench to do that. Okay, so taking a good look at the back motor mount, since I ordered all of them, they came as a bundle. Looks like the back one's actually good. It's not messed up. I'm going to go ahead and leave that one in. It's still good. My guess, to probably be able to take it off, you're going to have to loosen up this the CV axle, kind of move it out of the way a little bit so you can get to the bolts inside here. You can get to the bolts that are in there to remove the bracket. So it's a little bit more difficult than the other ones, but you shouldn't need to move the rack and pinion or none of that stuff.